Let's talk about Exodus and how to begin to begin. You're Black, you're done with the United States, and you're going to leave. You have made up your mind that you want to go, you just don't know how. Your mind probably immediately goes to money. What kind of nest egg do I need to emigrate? Is this going to be too expensive? I do have some upcoming Project Exodus content that will be focused on finances from the perspective of shifting your spending so that you can be disciplined and save your money. But spoiler alert, when it comes to emigrating, the hard truth is the question of how much money will I need to leave is not something that anyone can answer for you. Only you can answer that question for yourself. And truthfully, what I've learned, or better said, confirmed since beginning Project Exodus is that unfortunately, there is no template for doing this, like, at all. There is no list, there is no video of 5 easy steps to expatriate from the United States that I can put together for us. This isn't BuzzFeed. At this point, I've received a good 5 dozen responses to my questionnaire for Project Exodus from Black expats, and I am so grateful to all of you who took the time to complete it. I'm strategizing the best way to organize all of these data into succinct, comprehensible, digestible resources, ideally organized by country or region. But even without all of that done yet, your needs, your wants, and ultimately your experience doing this, leaving America, will be 100% unique to you. Just like you can't really say, here are 5 easy steps to plan a whole ass wedding. There are far too many variables that are specific to you and to your life to break such an undertaking down into 5 or 10 universal line items. However, there are some things that I've learned already, despite being a person who hasn't even done this yet. Y'all know I'm not yet on the other side. But I think and hope that what I've learned thus far will be a helpful precursor to some version of a how-to. This is my best advice on how to begin before all of the nuts and bolts of deciding if you're going to ship your belongings, sell off your furniture, donate your clothes, create your timeline, before you give notice to your landlord and or place of work. Before all that, you need to do a lot of other stuff. We have to make some decisions before the decisions. You have to know where you're flying before you can book a flight, and you have to know why that's where you're going. And I'm not even talking about the flight to actually move. I'm talking about flights to location scout. I'm talking about the decisions we have to make before the logistical, practical decisions, emotional decisions, political decisions. Because all of this will ultimately inform the how much money do I need question. So first, how and why do we even get to the point of being on this plane? Literally how right now, considering almost the entire world has banned Americans from entering because the world has realized that the United States is fucking ghetto. As of when I'm filming this, so many countries have banned Americans from entering that dead ass, this is actually more valuable than this. There's something like 195 countries in the world, and less than 30 are allowing Americans to enter right now. But we're gonna set that aside on today, and we're going to take this downtime to do our research and prepping, yeah? Beginning to begin. A very actionable first question to ask yourself is where in the world you've always been drawn to, even if you've never had the privilege to actually visit there, at least not yet. Ask yourself why you're drawn to these particular places, or maybe this one particular place, and even jot down these thoughts that you can maybe identify any standout characteristics, and then you can actually begin to do some preliminary research on this place or on these places. The second question or concern is climate, an obvious question, but an important one. Is this place getting hit particularly hard by climate change or pollution? Read up on the type of shit that might change your mind about somewhere. Consider location, and by that I literally mean proximity to the United States. How far away are you going to be from family and friends who aren't coming with you? Here in Cali, I'm already really far away from my family in Queens, which is my preference. But I can also be back in Queens in half a day if I really need it to be. Wherever I wind up in the world, I know I want to pick a place where I'll be able to get back to my family in New York within 24 hours if I need to, but also far enough away that I'm never expected to visit. After all this, we must then begin to get into heavier but critical questions like, what is the socioeconomic climate? What is the average yearly income? What is the wealth gap? With every country on our lists, we have to research questions like, is there class warfare? Is poverty enforced? Are there warrior cops? Because We already got that here, so any of this in a new locale, it's a no for me, dog. We are not uprooting our entire lives to have a nearly identical experience, but with a new country code. And this cannot be handed to you. No one can do this work for you. It is up to you and you alone to learn about not only the present of the countries that you're considering, but the history. Whatever countries you've narrowed it down to, whatever is on your short list, it's time to hit the books and also the internets. I did a Project Exodus live stream with Marina, the Global Black Girl, which I will link here in case you missed it. And she recommends going through the past 100 years of history of whatever country or countries that you are eyeing. In my opinion, as someone who, unlike Marina, has not done this, again, I am not yet on the other side. Still, in my uninformed, inexperienced opinion, I think that you should be more informed and experienced with the history of any countries you're looking at than that. I think you should look past 100 years. 100 years is the opening bid for your research, but I'd raise you another 100 at least. Why? Well, if you only go back 100 years in America's history, slavery was over, job done, right? Everything's fixed. And yet, here we are in 2020 where Black Americans live in a reality where the truth is slavery was merely rebranded. This whole thing, Project Exodus, it's from an American Black woman for other Black Americans. I am tickled if others find this series helpful in some way. Love that for you, but I've been candid about this from the jump. This content is about and for Black people who want to leave the United States, and this perspective informs Project Exodus. In fact, that is the entire point of Project Exodus. And if you're leaving a comment right now to say that this objective and the fact that I'm being unequivocal about this is somehow racist or reverse racist, you are why we're leaving. Anyway, I'm bearing all of this in mind when I say that we have to look past just 100 years of history with any countries that we're considering in any real way. We have to look at things like how recently this country or that country was still under colonial rule. Because even if it was more than 100 years ago since being freed from colonial rule, that type of history can still very much have an effect on the way racial hierarchies are preserved in many, many countries to this day. Cough Canada, cough, cough New Zealand, cough, cough. Going back to the example of America as why it is imperative that we look past a mere 100 years of history, America doesn't exist as it does today without slavery, even though slavery ended more than 100 years ago. Without slavery, without Jim Crow, without racism, there is no America. We have to go back far enough to learn and fully understand that chattel slavery existed here before democracy did. I will say that again. Chattel slavery existed in America before democracy did. And it is only through understanding this long-term history that we can understand current issues like the war on drugs and the prison industrial complex. And if you don't go far back in any country's history, critical information like this might elude you entirely. Now, thanks to imperialism and colonization, things like white supremacy, anti-blackness, colorism, these issues are international. They are worldwide, and we know this. I have to repeat this conceit literally every time I do any content around Project Exodus because guarantee there will be at least one f***wit in the comments saying things like, Black and brown countries have colorism and discrimination and racism too. Bitch, we know. Even in my case, where Trinidad is one of the most accessible options for me in terms of immigration because I'm the child of a citizen, Trinidad didn't even gain full independence from the UK until the early 60s, which means my dad has been alive longer than Trinidad has actually been independent. This is why, despite it being a minority white country, white supremacy still makes it so we can't 100% have nice things. Things like self-segregation, colorism, and anti-blackness abound amongst Trinis. Suffice to say, I am well aware that everywhere in the world is going to have its own challenges. Because I don't know if y'all noticed, but I'm Black, and on top of that, I'm a woman. There is nowhere in the world where I will experience 0.0 discrimination. I am as at peace with that as can be reasonably expected of me. What is not worldwide, however, is living in fear for my own life daily. And I'm not even going to qualify that with every time I step outside because Newsflash, we have to fear for our own lives in our own homes. Not to mention that being black in America means being treated as sub-citizens by a militarized police state that criminalizes blackness, poverty, queerness, homelessness, and mental illness. And God help you if you fall into 2 or 3 or 4 of these categories at the same damn time. For me, myself personally, I'm not trying to emigrate somewhere that also has soldier cops. Not to mention violent, bigoted citizens who brutalize people for being black or poor or trans, or black and poor and trans. We have to be wary of countries that fetishize the United States. Any country that sees what we have here as aspirational, that's a red flag. We have to examine countries that have leadership and practices and governance that shows deference to the behaviors of what we have here in the United States, because if so, that country too shall be stricken from my list. On the whole, the lasting influence of colonization will vary, but it must never be underestimated. How else do we wind up with so many white supremacist ideologies operating in predominantly black and brown countries? Only after answering these questions, doing the work, doing the Googling, doing the research, will you be able to create a list of countries that you think will suit your needs and desires. And then we can begin to reckon with the practical, more actionable concerns. Do you need citizenship to stay there long term, or do you just need to get out of Dodge every couple of months? How hard is it to apply for citizenship there? What's the job market like? Should you consult with a relocation specialist like the Global Black Girl? And if you guys know of others, feel free to leave them in the comments. From that list, you then whittle it down even more by asking yourself, what conveniences do you need or simply refuse to live without? Do you need to live somewhere that's more metropolitan with good public transportation? Or do you prefer to live somewhere that's more rural and remote? Do you need access to online shopping so that you can get things sent to you that you can no longer get locally? You know, personal care items, hair care, whatever. For me, access to reliable and fast internet is a convenience that I cannot be without. I need it for work. I also need to be somewhere where I can send and receive parcels easily, and not having these things is a deal breaker. Not to end this on a bleak note, but this must be understood and internalized. There is no paradise. On July 4th, Sonia Renee Taylor did a virtual panel called Finding Home. It was all about leaving the abusive relationship that is the United States, and they touched on this very point, that there is no paradise. There is no place that will be utopian. There is no place that will be perfect. But it is possible to create a life somewhere else that allows you to have peace and freedom. There are places that are not carceral states and where you are not born a criminal simply because you were born black. That is going to do it for this one, but I do have another Project Exodus live stream / discussion interview type of situation coming up this Saturday. It will be at 5:00 p.m. Pacific. I'll be doing a panel discussion with 2 of my friends who just flew the coop. They emigrated from the United States as soon as they had the opportunity. Once Mexico opened up, that is where they went, and that's where they will be for now. So I'm going to be talking to them about their experience getting out of America and what their plans are, and hopefully getting some helpful tips and advice from them as well. Thank you so much for hanging out with me until the end of this video. I hope that this was helpful in giving you some guidance on how to begin your own exodus. I will link my Project Exodus playlist right here so you can check out my interview with Marina, the Global Black Girl, and whatever else I might have done. I honestly can't remember. It's not much yet. We're still just getting started. But beyond that, I got nothing. So I hope to see you Saturday in the live stream, and I will leave you with a gentle reminder, and that is to never trust anyone with a Morphe code. Bye-bye.
That's a nappy-headed hose there, I'm going to tell you that now.